Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Today we're going to start our fifth and last module of this plan, this training plan, and we really hope that it's going to help you and that it helped you up to now to live your leadership role in this very delicate time we are currently experiencing. And we're going to sum up very briefly what we've seen together during Module 4. You may remember that the topic was experience, the experience of the source in our leadership and in organizational life, and this very central and essential dimension in our life. And in addition to that, we also reflected on the basis of this question, which is a very vital and important question. That is, are you living or are you surviving? And it has to do with our connection with the source. This was Module 4. And I just realized that I have to close my presentation because I just wanted to turn on also the audio. So here we go. And now, if you read the program during this fifth module, the topic will be the poor evangelizers.
El módulo estará compuesto de tres
And
partes.
this module is made up of 3 parts. The first part will be focusing on a prayer about the cost of living a prophetic leadership, which is related to the topic of this module, of course, the cost of living a prophetic leadership. After that, we're going to deepen the following topic. So we're going to see the topic of commitment with poor people and thinking and gestating an open world. How can we achieve this result? And how can we achieve this goal not only as an individual or personal option, but also as a collective and organizational option within our own communities? And then finally, we're going to focus on something that is not directly related to this topic, but that wouldn't miss since we're dealing with the last module. So we're going to reflect for a while about changes, their meanings, and so we're going to talk about changes, endings, transitions in the organizational life and in leadership, because this is the very last module. So we are already experiencing these on a small scale, but we are currently going through a transition from a program to something to an ending, the ending of this very program. So we're going to see what changes, endings, and translations represent in the life of a person, of a leader, and of an organization. So we are going to deal with these 3 topics that will be the main topics of this module. And now let's start straight away with the first part, which is a prayer. So I would like to urge you to keep a couple of minutes of silence just to make yours what we're going to listen to and what we're going to read, so that we can actually treasure this question, that is to say, what's the cost of living a prophetic leadership?
Y empezamos esta reflexión
And
con
we're
esta
going to start
imagen
this
de
reflection
Chagall
with this picture by Chagall. This is Jeremiah
del pozo
in the pit,
y que expresa palabras a Dios que,
and
bueno, no rebosan
he uttered
de
the
alegría ni de
following
entusiasmo.
words. He's not enthusiastic,
Dice
he's not
que
cheerful. He said, "You push me into this, God, and I
tantas
let you
veces
do
me
it.
diste que yo
And now I'm a public
me
joke.
venciste. Cada día he sido
Every
escarnecido.
time I
Cada
open my
cual
mouth, I'm shouting murder or rape, and all I get for my God warnings are insults and contempt. Cursed the
las
day
lágrimas
I was
de mi
born,
nombre.
the day my
No
mother
obstante,
bore me, a curse on
aviva
it,
mi
I
corazón
say,
como un
and
fuego
curse the
ardiente.
man who delivered the news to my father. You've got a new
Traté de
baby,
sufrirlo
a
y
boy
no pude.
baby."
Estas palabras tan fuertes
So these
del
very
profeta
harsh words by a
siempre
prophet
tan
who
seductor
felt
por Dios
pushed
que
into
se
this
podría decir es que no
by
le queda
God,
otro remedio
and he had no other
que
option
seguir esa voz,
than
ese grito
following
que le
that
atrae.
seducing voice
Nos
that attracted him
invita
and that
al
somehow
último módulo
connects
donde
us
vimos
with
a
the
Iglesia
last module where we
vinculada a
realized we
hombres y
saw
dioses,
that
los 7
fragment
pecados
of
de Quirim y al final
gods and
los
men of
tumbos
that movie, and here we
en
can see
monasterios en Argelia,
the
las
graves of
formas
those
tan
monks who
sencillas
lost their life in a
que
monastery
contienen
in Algeria. Very
una parte de
basic, we
los
could
cuerpos
say,
que fueron
graves containing
sacrificados.
spoils of the bodies they had to sacrifice.
Otra imagen que nos
And
habla
this is
del
another
costo
image
de un
that can
liderazgo
tell us
profético.
about the cost of a prophetic leadership.
Y Walter Brueggemann, un
And
biblista
Walter Brueggemann,
que escribe cosas muy
Biblist, wrote
interesantes,
something very
dice que
interesting,
los
and he said
profetas
that
son
prophets are
poetas.
poets.
Y dice, los profetas son
And
poetas
he
porque
says
reformulan lo que está
they
pasando
reframe what
en
is at
tiempos
stake in
caóticos.
chaotic times. They
Describen
describe the world differently
según su don propio,
according
los
to the
dones,
gifts
la
of
poesía.
their insight, and their
Los
gift is
profetas
poetry.
tienen
And prophets
esa capacidad
have the
de
skill
reformular lo que está
to
en juego,
reframe what is at
no
stake,
desde el nivel racional de la
not from a
persona,
rational point of view of a person,
desde el corazón,
but
desde lo
from
que nos
the
toca
heart, from our
más
emotions, and from
profundamente.
what touches us
Y
deeply.
describen el mundo,
And
ese mundo que todos vemos, pero lo
he's
describen de una
describing
manera
that world, and he's describing
que
it.
nos abren los
They
ojos,
describe the world
que
differently,
nos ayudan a ver
and they are
lo que está
opening
entre
our
las líneas,
eyes,
lo que
and
no
they
vemos.
help us to see what's between the lines, what we couldn't perceive at
Esa
first.
capacidad
So it's that
de decir
ability
lo
to
que es
say,
con palabras que tocan,
to
con
reveal the
imágenes
meaning,
que
the real
conmueven.
meaning with moving words
Y
and
Walter
touching
Brueggemann
words.
dice la
And Walter
poesía
Brueggemann also said,
es muy
poetry
importante.
is so important.
La poesía no es necesariamente escribir en verso,
Poetry doesn't mean writing,
es
rhyming
un
verses, but it's a
lenguaje
symbolic
que se
language.
inspira de
It's the language
la
that draws
naturaleza,
inspiration from nature, from life
Jesús es un
itself.
poeta.
Jesus
Vemos
is
como,
very, Jesus
como
himself is a poet. When we
el
see
reino
how
de Dios, ¿no?
tell us about
Es
God's
pura poesía.
kingdom.
Y
So
Walter
that's
Brueggemann dice,
poetry
la
too.
poesía es tan
And Walter
importante
Brueggemann
porque va
says poetry is so
abriendo,
important because it just
abriéndote,
keeps
abriéndote,
opening and
abriéndote,
opening and
mientras
opening.
que las doctrinas
Whereas doctrines
se cierran
are to close and
y
close
te
and
encierran
close
y al final
until
te quedas con
you're
algo
left
muy seco,
with
algo
nothing
que no tiene
that
un
has
poder, una energía
any
transformadora.
transformative power.
Otro aspecto
And
del
then
profeta
another aspect of
es el que
prophetism
viene de Richard
comes
Rohr,
from Richard
y es
Rohr.
que los profetas,
And he
diría
said that prophets, and I would say leaders or prophetic leaders in this case,
se sitúan
They are at the edge of systems. They are situated inside of systems. And Richard Rohr says experiences are the borders from inside is different than living the border or the edge from the outside. It says to live on the edge of the inside is different than being an outsider. Yes, you've learned the rules and you understand and honor the system, but you don't need to protect it, defend it, or promote it. No, that's not the way I have to channel my energy. I'm part of the system and of the organization, but I have one foot inside and another outside. And this doesn't mean that it will diminish my sense of belonging, but as the leader of an organization, sometimes I mentally think I'm a leader, so I am in the center of the system. But actually, maybe we would have to rethink about this mental image, and we should think that probably, who knows, maybe the prophet is at the edge of the system. That's where we have interaction and contacts and exchanges and mutual enrichment and the fact of providing each other a valuable contribution within the system and the context from the edge, not from the center. So he says that the doorkeeper loves both the inside and the outside of their group, and they know how to move between these loves. And then we're going to see something coming from the Jewish tradition, a message from the Jewish tradition. And some Jewish scholars said that the message of the prophets is loud, clear, and explicit, like the blasts of the shofar, like the sound of a shofar, which is that horn that Jewish people blast or play on some days, on some holidays, on some Jewish holidays at given times, and based to and according to Jewish mystics, it's a primitive sound. It's the sound that is left when there are no words left. When all words have been uttered, that's the sound that is left, the sound of a shofar. And he says that the voice of prophets is loud, clear, and explicit, like the blasts of the shofar.
Todo lo que voy a ir presentando ahora viene de
Everything I'm presenting now has been formulated by some Jewish thinkers that express that symbol of the shofar has something leading us to think about prophetic voices. So when the shofar is sounded, it is time for you to cry, a wordless cry. It's like the weeping cry of our mother Rachel, like the piercing cries of our mother Sarah. It is the moment when all human voices penetrate the skies. So it's a wordless cry.
Y Walter Brueggemann
And Walter Brueggemann also says the laments are refusals to settle for the way things are. They are acts of relentless hope that believe that no situation is going to fall outside of Yahweh's capacity for transformation. The Song of Lamentation is a sign of our hope in God. Then we go back to those comments expressed by Jewish scholars about the shofar. There's another comment stating that the shofar arouses the divine voice within, calling us back to our source. And this is related to the previous module, but it also leads to our awareness, the awareness of the fact that prophetism is nourished by this source, like leadership derives its nourishment from the source. So that inner voice, the divine voice within, calling us back to our source, to the mystery, to what's larger than us.
Y aquí también un comentario de un judío, el
And this
poder
is another comment by a Jewish scholar. The shofar's power pierces all the barriers that separate a person from their inner self. And we've been dealing with this aspect during the webinar. And it's not the incorporation, it's something that is separating me from myself. It's not an incorporation of some new external idea. No, it's a return to one's genuine self. It's the power of the shofar. So the power of the prophetic voice pierces all the barriers that separate a person from their inner self. And then, once again, about the shofar, we blow the shofar to remind us of our commitment to God and God's commitment to us. This is the alliance. The prophetic voice reminds us of the alliance. And this is something that we can read it very clearly in the prophetic texts of the Bible. And now we're going to observe a few minutes of silence just to finalize this prayer, having a look at these two images that they are identical and different at the same time. And they remind us of that prophetic voice, leading us to connect and go back to the source and to pour people to the world and leading us back to connect with ourselves.
Bueno, pues ahora voy a pasar el
Now I
micro.
would like to give the floor to Emily, who's going to present the second part I made reference to before. Thank you, Emily. Thank you. it looks that Piluca wanted to remind us that being a leader can be dangerous, especially if you're a leader that takes the words of the gospel. It can be very dangerous. And the danger is the danger of prophetism, which can be dangerous sometimes. So we're going to continue, and we're going to see somehow a summary of the different topics we dealt with throughout the different modules, so that we can have a general overview of all the matters we took care of and we've been talking about.
Muy bien.
Very well.
This
is Module 5. As you know, we already know, by now we already know these two characters have been accompanying us since the very beginning. So what's the question they are asking themselves at the end of this path of 5 modules? That's the question. The very question that we asked ourselves at the beginning. What leadership for a world in a gestation? And this is the question that we've been trying to answer throughout the first previous 4 modules. And I can imagine that all of us have some data or some figures or some information in order to answer these questions. So we are able to answer all the questions we asked ourselves during the different modules. And the starting point is going to be this one. So the one about vision. The poor evangelize, so that's the title of today's module, but basically this is not a strategy. That is to say, it's not like we want to get close to the edges or to the marginalized, or it's not a strategy, but it's more of the direction, it's a vision. And from the point of view of the Bible, he reminded us that the prophets, as leaders, were leaders people listened to, even though sometimes, people weren't just were not just being listened to, but they were also stoned because they said their uncomfortable truth. They're able to awaken people with their words, with their signs, with their facts. Prophets sometimes did very unusual things so that people were wondering, what are they going to, or what are they trying to tell us? It's like that horn, that powerful horn sounding that we've listened to before, and it's the ability to arouse us, to awaken us, to pass on a vision. They know what they want, prophets know what they want, and they commit themselves. And they're ready to pay the price, to pay that cost. And many prophets in our world and in our church had to pay the price, like the monks in Algeria and all the martyrs we all have in our religious families. They all had to pay the price. And vision is combined with maintenance. So this is something that we can see in all important institutions. This is important because together with vision, we have to have maintenance. So you have to take care of everyday things in all organizations. And if you are taking up the position of a leader, then you do not only have to have a vision, but you only have to keep up with everyday business, with everyday matters. You have to maintain things. For example, you have to start a new mission in another country, or you have to welcome people with in vacation. You have to start their formation, or you have to take care of somebody who's questioning their faith, or somebody who passes away, or somebody's telling you that there's somebody in a hospital. So that's everyday life. And probably it would be very interesting that all of us could ask us this question, knowing that both matters are important, that in one day, in one week, or in one month, how much time do I devote to vision and how much time do I devote to maintenance? I myself have experience in the field of leadership, and I perfectly know that maintenance sometimes takes up most of the time because it's something unexpected and you have to do it. You have to take care of it. So probably I didn't ever, it wasn't always able to find the right balance between maintenance and vision, but vision is very important. So how much time do we devote to vision and how much time do we devote to maintenance in our council, for example? How much time do we devote to both of these aspects? And this is a text about Proverbs. I really like it. And it says that when there is no prophetic vision, the people decline. And so we see what the consequences were for a prophetic moment for the church and for the world. So this is essential in a leader. We have to keep our vision alive. And this is a leader's role. If a leader won't take care of it, then who else will? And sometimes we are really busy with our everyday life and with the need to maintain things. So, and that's then this prophetic vision coming from the gospel that let us see our brotherhood where we have peace, where we have justice. And I think that part of this vision poses the question of what vision, what does vision mean in today's world? We need to understand how our current world is working. We try to give you some information and some keys to interpret our world so that we're able to work in a smart way and to understand how to act ourselves. I think this is part of the vision too. So we are going to remember some things we've already seen together, and we're going to establish a connection with today's reality. And when I'm talking about today, then I really mean today. So we need to educate our education. We need to understand what's currently happening. And I think that the elections in the United States can be a very good example. You already know what happened. And apart from an anecdote of people and apart from details, I think that what matters is to be able to read between the lines, to have a deep reading of what happened. The United States can work as a model that we could use also for other countries too. So you perfectly know what happened. Three TV broadcasting companies, the US, well, they just shut off the president of the US. So they said, we're sorry, but we cannot keep on. And so they cut Trump's speech. And on Twitter, they felt the need to indict or to indicate, to add this comment under the president's tweet. They said that some of the content shared in this tweet was disputed and might be misleading about an election or other civic process. And Facebook was even harsher in a way. because about what Donald Trump said in text, they added this comment on Facebook. Both voting by mail and voting in person have a long history of trustworthiness in the US. Voter fraud is extremely rare across voting methods. So, in other words, Facebook is correcting the president. So just observe these data. So here we're talking about 79,000 people. And here we're talking about
48 millones, ya no sé lo que sería esto con estos datos, pero en cualquier caso,
the times that this post has been shared. This is, it's more than 4,000 shares. Right, thank you very much. So we already experienced this previously. And what can we relate these messages to? So you probably remember that somebody is downloading in a way. So you get rid of what you've been always thinking. So you don't get carried away by what you've always been thinking. No, you just get rid of that part. You download everything. And you deny that part because there were apparent figures. So somebody said, how can he deny objective figures? So because we were seeing things with our closed eyes, and sometimes you desense. You're not sensitive anymore, and you create hatred. So the polarization we've been seeing in the United States, it's the very polarization that we can see in other countries too. And then it's a matter of encouraging fear. And these will lead to destroying. So you probably remember this topic, that is to say, dissensing, sensing, blaming, destroying. These topics, we've already seen them. I think it's a circle that has been triggered. It has been triggered, and it's a matter of wondering, so who's behind that person? What powers are leading to that circle of destruction? Is it based on interests? And then we should also remember what Piluca shared with us about the historic moment we're currently going through. And Piluca told us about the 6 ages, the ages of pioneers, of conquest, of commerce, affluence, intellect, and decadence. And right now, we are situated in the age of decadence, number 6. So I think it would be awkward if we just made reference to anecdotes. As a matter of fact, of leaders, we needed to share our vision, our brothers and sisters. And so it's important to understand what's happening in the world today, and we need to be able to interpret it in the right way. And I would like to share with you this recent tweet. It's by Words for the Human Spirit. It's Margaret Whitley. That's her picture. And this tweet was, well, appeared before the election. It was towards the last week of October, and many people already voted by mail. And she's talking about this, and she says, Americans voted in record numbers to reveal who we are. We are ungovernable. Together is a meaningless concept. All of us voted from self-protection. Some of us included others in what we wanted to protect. Some of us included the planet. All of us voted our desperation. And I think it's harsh. I think it's something very harsh, but I think it comes close to reality. And I think that we could use the same words also in other countries, not only the US. And then she goes on and she says, well, it's a threat, of course. So I just inserted some parts of this thread, and she said there were no winners and losers, only losers. There was no failure of strategy, outreach, voter appeal. There is no healing to be done. We are in the last stage of the well-marked pattern of collapse. So we don't need to be surprised. This has always happened. It has always occurred throughout history, this well-marked pattern of collapse. And this final stage, we, like civilizations before us, will dissolve into an ending conflict. We will grab what we can, watch the lights take everything, and ignore the real enemy at our gates, climate. And in this stage, we reveal the greatness of human beings too. So, as warriors for the human spirit, we do what we can where we are to alleviate suffering and remind people by our very being that we humans can be generous, creative, and kind no matter what is going on around us. This is terribly up to date. This was published a few days ago, but I think it's very useful because it positions us in the context we're currently experiencing. So it's important to share this vision with other people too. And this, beyond all superficial facts, it's important to see this in a wider context. And I also wanted to share with you another reflection by Otto Scharman that said on the 30th of October. And I think this is a very interesting article reminding us this. The darkest hour is just before the dawn. How to transform Trumpism after Trump. On post-truth, post-democracy, and post-humanity. It's important to remember Trump as a symbol, not as a person, as a symbol that we can apply to other situations. So in this article, so I just wanted to highlight some charts, some aspects that can sum up this reading very well. So we started here, so with this cycle, that is to say the destroying cycle. And then we can read it as a parallel with this reading. So we are in a moment of post-truth, of post-democracy, and of post-humanity. So we can establish a parallelism with this chart too. So post-truth, it is to say, it's all that disinformation and doubts. So all mass media keep on repeating and repeating disinformation until the end, so that also the most sensible people will start having their doubts. And that's what happens. That's what happens. And disinformation can also generate doubts in people, among people. And then post-democracy, because what we build, what are we building? We are building architectures of separation. So we generalize to contrasting poles. It's like my tribe or my group against yours. So we've seen pictures of people holding weapons, saying that they were going to defend democracy, but their own conception of democracy, thereby encouraging hatred. And then post-humanity, because we're fueling fanatism and fear. Then we increase depression, anxiety, and fear. I think this is a strategy in order to find followers through not through reason but through fear, and I think there are very powerful forces behind there. For example, Trump has been paying. If we had a look at all the uh, promoters of Trump's political campaigns, that we would find, for example, oil companies that they would do anything they could, and they would be available to pay any price in order to create hatred or to generate violence or to spread disinformation out, as long as their business are safe. The Washington Post counted all the lies that President Trump published, and they came to 25,000 since 2017. More than 25,000 lies, like, for example, the non-existence of climate change and so on. And this is just a schematic reading of what's happening. I think it can give us an idea of what's happening in a very way. And then, so we can see everything sum up with by these three aspects. So activate action confidence. Do not download those data you always had. Are you able to listen to other people with humility? So science, let the data talk to you. And then build architectures of connection. So can you sense the system from the edges? So are you able to see the world from the weakest point? The Pope insisted many times on the importance of having uh, a look at the world from the edges, because from the very center you will only be seeing your navel, whereas from the edges you can see everything with the feet in the right position where they are supposed to be. And then activate action confidence. Can you sense and actualize the future as it emerges? In other words, are you able to commit yourself to activating and to achieving those new aspects emerging that are the signs of a new world? And are you able to promote what's currently emerging on a personal level? That is to say, from the cycle of absence to the cycle of presence, from being far away from the world to being present and committed to the world. And as you can see, this is very personal questions that we can ask a leader. Are you able to listen? Are you able to sense? Are you able to commit yourselves? And they point out towards a direction. That is to say, we have to get out our comfort zone and we need to move to the place where the magic happens, where miracles happen. And this is an experience I'm sure that we all went through in a moment of our lives. The moment I was asked, for example, to do something that I thought was impossible for me to achieve it, then in the end, I just left my comfort zone and entered this other circle, and there something magic happened. So I found out that there were skills I didn't know I had very enriching encounters, and so on, and so on. And I think that we all have these experiences, and the same applies to a collective or organizational level. So we can learn, we can sense, we can commit ourselves, but in a structural and collective way in this case. So before disinformation and doubt, there will be new learning infrastructures where persons and the whole system are taken into account. New democratic infrastructures, more direct, distributed, and dialogic, as happens in many parts of the world. tests of a direct democracy which has been built by everybody, where everybody is involved. And many parliaments are not an example of democracy, though. And then new economic infrastructures, that is to say, shifting the economy from ego to eco, changing that destruction cycle into an evolution cycle. So we have to put an end to self-destruction, which will end up in trauma, and we need to replace it by evolution. And I think this is something brilliant. So I think that Otto Scharmann and his U theory was able to provide us a very synthetic and clear scheme, and it was able to define what's happening and what we think that it's happening. And this is exactly what Pope Francis has been promoted since the beginning. And this is his vision as a leader, and he expressed it very well in Evangelii Gaudium, and he expressed it very well in All Brothers. So now I would like to go through it because you'll see that there are some similarities between what these authors and the Pope said, or the other way around. So you're going to see the main key messages of the encyclical. And he starts talking about somehow gloomy context, like the one by Margaret Willey. So talking about polarization and inequalities and the fact that there's a deterioration of spiritual values. So he's talking about dark clouds. And as an alternative, he says that we need to envisage and engender an open world. It is an open world with open doors, committing ourselves. And then he says that we need to experience our new world, take into account structural causes. The state needs to be present. We have to avoid exclusion, promote peace. So we have these two poles. And on the other hand, he's talking about a heart open to the whole world. So what actions work in favor of universal fraternity? And he says we need to welcome, protect, promote, and integrate migrants. And then we need to become more aware that nowadays either we're all safe together or no one is safe, that we are a world ecosystem. We're all dependent ones on the other. And then forging a global judicial, political, and economic order that favors the development of all peoples in solidarity. What Otto Scharmann defined as the democratic structures, the learning structures, and so on. And how can we build this bridge between a closed and an open world? So this is the main part of the encyclical, which is based on the parable of the Good Samaritan. And I wanted to highlight a couple of aspects. First of all, this image of the resuscitated person. So the resuscitated is identified with the victims of history. And we see the whole path. He's being ignored, but the Good Samaritan welcomes him. He takes care of it, he cleans him, and he celebrate these acts of charity and of fraternity. So they start with the Trinity of the evil, because we have two people attacking the victim, and it starts with a Trinity of good, reminding us the Trinity of God, with people sitting at the same table, diversity and diversity in unity. So this is the path from a closed world to an open world, and we can achieve this through welcoming, taking care, cleaning, and supporting other people. So we needed to move from a throwaway culture to a culture of encounter. So this is the two worlds. So where we are currently living and where we are going in this moment of decadence. So a throwaway culture, and where we want to go to the culture of encounter. And he's also talking about the importance of dialogue. We already mentioned it many times during our webinar. So the central role played by dialogue. And that's something very important. We need to deepen dialogue. Sometimes we understand it theoretically, but turning it into practice, turning dialogues into practice, it's not always easy. And then in the encyclical, the Pope also talks about politics, a better politics in the service of everybody. And finally, he's talking about paths of renewed encounter, a path toward peace, and the action toward marginalized and poor people. Mary in her Magnificat and in the world that is being proclaimed. So new economic and democratic infrastructures, like the ones mentioned in Otto Scharmann's scheme, and he also made reference to other systems of learning. And it's exactly what the Pope is promoting through this global compact of education, educating young people to the fraternity, to learn to overcome divisions and conflicts, promote hospitality, justice, and peace. Pope Francis invites everyone who cares about the education of the young generation to sign a global pact to create a global change of mentality in education. Just to say, we need to go beyond a simple structural change, but we need to change our mindset. We need to have a new paradigm. And this is also reflected by the text you read. You probably remember it. And in the Congress of the Cardinals before a conclave, this was the program that he had been developing. And if we read it, then we can say, yes, he said it from the very beginning. Pope said it from the very beginning. He's talking about a church that is going out to the peripheries, or he's talking about an auto-referential church, an evangelizing church, and he also talks about a mundane church. I'm going through this very quickly in order to remind you everything. What's an evangelizing church based on the Evangelii Gaudium? It's a church that is going out, that is poor and for the poor, and it's a Samaritan kind of church. And we've already seen the parable of the Good Samaritan. And in All Brothers, that's the summary. We can find this summary of the Pope's vision, and that's probably also the vision that we would need to treasure and to pass on. So in the power of the risen Lord, the church wants to give birth to a new world where all of us are brothers and sisters, where there is room for all those whom our societies discard, where justice and peace are resplendent. And I would like to remind you that text by Margaret Weekly, that Piluca read it out loud for us. I can't imagine a more important task than to consciously choose who we want to be as a leader for this time. We must understand the time we're in. So we need to find time to understand what's happening in our world. We need to focus our energy on what's possible. The Pope is talking about a new imagination of the possible, of what's possible, and willingly step forward to serve the human spirit. So I think that everybody chose to be in the service of the gospel and of people, and to make this reality, this a reality, that you say, to make, to fulfill God's dream. And this is the very last image I wanted to present to you. So I'm not saying that we are not going to be the ones who are going to say the word. So I just wanted to remind you what Christiane Singer, a French author, said. Well, she passed away because of cancer. She was very young, and she wrote the very last fragments of a long trip when she was in the hospital dying of cancer. And we can find these texts in her book. The question we will be asked at the end of our life will be a simple one. Not who have you been, but rather, what did you allow to be done for you? So the question is not who have you been, and not even who were you, but what did you allow to be done for you? And I think this is some food for thought. So I would like you to spend a couple of minutes to reflect upon this, and following that, Piluca will be presenting another part, and there will be time for reflection and to share our thoughts. But now, let's keep a couple of minutes of silence to reflect.
Luca, espero que no estemos abusando.
Piluca, I hope that we are not taking advantage of our followers' patience. As a matter of fact, we just wanted to concentrate these three reflection moments so that there was enough time for everybody to reflect and to participate. So I don't know if you want to continue, Piluca. Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. And we do hope that you understand why we decided to concentrate everything like this, so that there will be time for you to take the floor at the end of this module. Thank you very much for your presentation, Emily. As we said at the beginning, since it's the last module, we thought that we couldn't finish this program about leadership without touching upon the topic of transitions and changes in the organizational life and in leadership, because this is something that is strictly connected with what we do and has a great impact on people and systems. And sometimes it's a very enriching and positive impact, and sometimes it can lead to wounds or disruptors that shouldn't have occurred. But I think that we're all familiar with these changes and transitions and endings. And I think that the topic of changes, endings, and transitions can be connected with those parts of human experience, like persons, contexts, systems, the experience of God, because we can say it based on our experience that changes, transitions, and endings occur both within individual people and in organizations and in the contexts. My mobile thought that I was talking to it. Sorry about that. So if we think now that about the time we're currently living due to COVID, then we all know that transition and changes is a situation that is impacting and affecting the global and world context. We are part of a world in transition. So we know where we come from. We are experiencing a very particular moment with unprecedented characteristics in recent history, and we don't know what is going to happen next. And many global processes are being revealed and accelerated by the pandemic. It's not that they were created out of nowhere, they were there. They were hiding there, but they became apparent. They were revealed and they were accelerated by the pandemic. So the topic of transition and changes is a clear signal of the context where we're currently living in. And these affects both people and organizations. When we presented you all those three fields of experience, and we said that they are all interacting among them all the time. And now we have a concrete example. Couldn't be clearer. So these changes, these transitions, these incredible transitions and changes can have a very important impact on people and on our organizations. So this is on one hand. And then there's something important too, especially as far as people are concerned. And all of that, we are not only worried about our own change, about the processes, about changes, but we also feel responsible for people who are undergoing processes of change. And it's important to make a distinction between change and transition. Change is something external. Change is situational. The new structure, a new boss, a new context. So they're all situational changes, whereas transitions are psychological, they are internal, they are emotional. Transition is the process people go through to come to terms with a new situation when dealing with change. So transition is something internal, whereas change can be external. For example, there can be a change of government within my congregation. This is an external change, and this will be affecting me somehow. It will affect the way I experience transition from a government to another. And it's important, therefore, to make a distinction between change and transition. So I highlighted it here in yellow so that you can draw your attention to it. And so we should always consider the fact that when dealing with change, we always have to take care of the transition. So when we talk about changes affecting myself and the people I feel responsible for, well, we should always take into consideration the psychological impact and the processes that those people or myself need to go through to come to terms with a new situation, to come to terms with the changes that took place. And when dealing with change, take care of the transition. Managing change successfully requires leaders to deal effectively with both the structural side of leading change and the human dynamic of transition. So if among yourselves there's somebody that is involved in the process of the change of a structure or the congregation, then it's not enough to look for the best structures, the best possible structures. No, we do also need to understand how we can take care of the human dynamic of those changes, because they represent processes of transition that need to be taken care of and that need our attention. So there's always a structural aspect of the change and a psychological, human, and emotional and spiritual dynamic of transition. I suggested 3 books here for you, and it's 3 books that may be interesting for you about this topic. I'm not going to comment. And now we're going to talk about how we experience changes. So, what feelings do I have when I reach the end of a significant stage? Maybe I was a provincial, and in 1 month, I won't be a provincial anymore. What feelings do I have when I reach the end of a significant stage? Or, for example, when a project finishes in which I've been very involved. So when a project in which I've been very involved comes to an end, how do I feel? For example, Emily and I are going to ask these questions to ourselves because we were really involved in this project. Or how do I feel when I enter a phase of transition? The experience of reaching the end of something like a project or a mandate or a stage of my professional life or my apostolic life. So the experience of reaching the end of a significant project triggers a whole series of questions and feelings in me, and we needed to express them. We do not need to hide them and pretend that they're not there, because they are there. And reaching the end of a project, of a significant project, or reaching the end of a significant experience or of a significant responsibility will make me understand, or will make me remember other past experiences, either difficult or not, that I already went through. So emotionally, I am relating to other past experiences, both easy and difficult. And some of them will elicit anxiety or fear, and some others will lead to serenity and confidence. And then I'm questioning myself about what I achieved. So, how was it? What did I achieve? And how did I feel when I achieved that? And then I have to be aware of what I could have done and that I didn't do. This is another question that I have to ask myself. And then the challenge of accepting both disappointment and gratitude by others, of course. So I needed to accept the fact that, for example, I disappointed some people, I disenchanted them, and there I also need to accept the fact that people are thankful to me. So how do I feel? How do I live this? How do I experience this? From which part of my being? And everything that has been written here is very genuine, is very human, is real. So we cannot just close our eyes. No, we need to ask all ourselves all these questions. And then maybe I'm worried about the image and the memories I left behind. And if I am too worried, this can be destructive. How can I get rid about these concerns? And similar to that is what reputation did I win or did I earn? Was it good reputation? Was it bad reputation? All these feelings and thoughts can be found in ourselves when we reach the end of a project or of a responsibility or of a mandate. And we could add something else. That's why I indicated here. Do add something yourself. And then there are other mechanisms or coping mechanisms to deal with changes. And I wanted to mention two of them. The first one is premature ending. Probably some of you will relate to that. Not all of you, but this is a coping mechanism to deal with changes. So it's something mechanical. It's not aware. It comes from the unaware. So, for example, I can change a date. I can anticipate a deadline, for example, in a mechanic way. I've been working with different general councils, and I've been a member of general councils, and Emily too. So it goes without saying that if you see the deadline approaching, so emotionally, I don't want to generalize, but what can happen is that emotionally and mentally, and also in a practical way, some people 6 months before the deadline already finalized their job, or they already consider that they are not going to be working anymore. So in a mechanic way, they're physically there, but their coping mechanism is I just sit there and I don't do anything. And then another coping mechanism is the denial of ending. So something happened, but you pretend that it didn't. So you deny the ending of that project, and so by doing so, you extend that responsibility, that project, that mandate. So these two coping mechanisms in the face of change, I think that they should be highlighted. I think they're quite interesting, and it's important to be able to express them. And if we recognize that we are affected by them, we need to do something about them. I think it's human. We all have coping mechanisms. And for a trapeze artist to grab the next bar, he or she has to let go of the last one, of course. So this image is pretty clear. So we all went through a transition phase that was a challenging one. It was a tough one. It was a difficult one. until we let go of the last bar, then we couldn't grab the next one. Yet, George Adair said, everything you want, everything you desire is on the other side of fear. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. But I would say it's on the other side of that not wanted to let go, because sometimes we're afraid of the void. Transition is a very uncomfortable phenomenon, and some transitions call for help. So for some transitions, we need accompaniment, we need help, we need support. In this slide, this PowerPoint slide, well, I included a table. Well, we won't be exploring it in detail because there's not enough time, but I would like to urge you to read it through, because on the white horizontal lines, we can see how leaders can help. And as leaders, we can wonder, how can I help groups, or how can I help people who are in the letting go phase, or are in a transitional phase, or are in the beginning of a new phase. So you have tips on how to help people as leaders. And I think that you can take advantage of these tips, of these. This is a sort of tool that you can resort to. And I think it's very useful, even though we won't be seeing it in detail now because there's no time, but it's a practical and concrete tool you can use. And then I just wanted to mention very quickly this topic, and I hope that you'll be able to deepen it also following this webinar. I just wanted to talk about the different systemic changes occurring within an organization or within a congregation, for example. There are some explicit changes, for example, the change of structures, of norms, of practices, or the way we manage our resources. Sometimes in the face of problems, we say, okay, we're going to change the directory. Sometimes, or we're going to change our constitution. Well, I'm not saying that it's not necessary to do so, but if we only do this, then it will only be a structural change if there's nothing else. And then there are semi-explicit changes, and they have to do with relational dimensions, not necessarily interpersonal dimensions, but it has to do with the dynamics of power, with relations and connection. You probably remember what we said about authority, power. It's about also the relations and connections among different roles and parts and parties. And we are talking about more complex changes in this case that can lead to more transformative energy. And then change of our mental models, of our mindsets. And this is an implicit and transformative kind of change. We cannot have a systemic change with just one of these levels. We need all of them. We need these three levels, and we have to consider all of them at the same time. And now, and what's my experience of God in changes and transitions? And to keep on mentioning the Jewish tradition, like we've been doing during the prayer, I would like to go back to this tradition once again with Jacob's dream, with Jacob's sleep, that he said that he didn't realize that he was in a place and didn't know. And I'm going to leave you with the thought of a Jewish thinker that he interpreted this moment of Jacob's life where he awoke from his sleep and he was confused about God's presence in that very chaotic moment he was going through and how he sees God. And he says that God was found in the I, in the self of Jacob. So God was there in all those stages of change. And on the other hand, he says that Jacob becomes aware of God's presence and exclaims, "It is in the I, the self, that I do not know, that I can truly experience God's presence. Only when I empty myself of the ego and self-serving explanation that encrusts me, I can truly experience God's presence." That's what he said. Now, as Emily said, we still have some minutes so that we can start a conversation about the experience of this program. I would like to introduce you or to provide you with a list of questions. Then first we're going to observe a bit of silence for you to be able to think about the answers of the questions we're going to indicate, and everybody can take the floor. So you're all invited to take the floor, and Emily will now explain how you can take the floor, and I'll be facilitating this conversation and your participation. So I'm going to present the questions, then we will be observing some moments of silence, and Emily will tell you how to take the floor later on. So we have 3 questions. What questions, desires did I come with? And what was I looking for as I came to the program? So that's the first question. So what question, desires did I come with? What was I looking for as I came to the program? Second question, what have I discovered about myself in my role as a leader? What have I discovered about myself in my role as a leader? And the third question is, what questions and issues am I left with, and what do I want to do with them? So, what questions and issues am I left with, and what do I want to do with them? So, I'm going to repeat once again the questions because they're written in Spanish so that you can write it down. So the first question is, what questions and desires did I come with, and what was I looking for as I came to the program? Second question, what have I discovered about myself in my role as a leader? And third question, what questions and issues am I left with, and what do I want to do with them? And now, 2 minutes of silence, and then Emily will explain you how to take the floor.
naturalmente quien tome la palabra no está, a ver, no decimos que tienen que contestar a las 3 preguntas.
If you take the floor, you do not have to listen to the 3 questions. You can only answer just 1 or 2 questions, or only 1, or all of them. So it's up to you. You don't have to answer all of them if you take the floor. Yes, thank you very much, Luca. So yeah, these are the 3 questions that you can use as a guiding principle, just to sum up a bit what the main or the most important aspects of this course were, and maybe they can help you to share your experiences about how you started, what you learned, and what's left, and what are the issues left. Of course, as Piluca said, you do not have to answer the 3 questions, so you can only pick one if you want and answer just one. And then, well, just use the hand button down below so that you can raise your hand, and that I'll know that you are willing to take the floor, and then I'll give you the floor. So just use the raising hand icon. You can see it under the participants section. There's already one, I think.
Muy bien, gracias. Tenemos...
Thank you very much. We have Teresa Fernandez. Please go ahead.
Emily, no podemos abrir los micrófonos, tiene que hacerlo
Emily,
ella. Por eso que
she has to unmute her microphone. Yes, I did. So thank you. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for everything you taught us. And as to the questions you asked us, well, I came to this program wanting to learn a lot, because sometimes you have to act as a leader in your community, and you're holding this office without knowing exactly what you have to do and how you have to do it. There's no magic formula. So it's very useful to listen to how to some tips that can help you, and some tools. And so I thought it was very interesting, and it was very positive that you provided us and that you highlighted the topic of the dynamic of power, and in order to understand this in a better way. And now I think that also these mechanisms and conditions really are really helping me. They can really help me to understand myself and others better, and to experience authority as a basic need of people, and also as a stage of our life, as a phase of our life, because we all go through these stages. And we all seize our offices, and then other brothers and sisters will take over. And I think it's very interesting that you can act as a leader with a humble heart. And I think that this is very interesting, especially when you have to work in the service of other. And then I think that I really like the question that about how I feel myself, how do I perceive myself to understand others better. So I just wanted to thank you, and I would like to urge you to organize even more training courses or formation courses, because they can really help us especially the new ones or the ones that were never undertook leading roles. And so, yes, I think that we can experience everything from the heart, and we're able to experience everything from the heart. And since Teresa was the first one, I think she deserves a prize, right? A reward. So in the end, there will be, we're going to sing a prayer in 3 different sentences. So one in Spanish, one in English, and one in French, and in Italian. That will you be willing to read that in Spanish? The sentence in Spanish? Yes, I will. Yes, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, according to where you are. I thought it was very interesting. Especially, I really liked receiving some information I didn't know much about, and especially information relating to the role of a leader. So, what am I left with? So, well, I always have this question, a question about my service towards authority and power. I learned a lot, and I really like the way you were sharing your knowledge and information. Well, you did so using your wisdom and intelligence. And one of the topics that really drew my attention was the fact that we are people and we are people within a given context. And now, during this pandemic, everything is connected. So, and now we have to start again. And I need to start again considering that I am a person and I have to move from this idea as a person. So I wanted to thank you, Emily, for his tips, and also Piluka. And among the topics that, topics that struck me the most were the one about was the topic of authority and power in consecrated life, and how to find the right balance. Sometimes we get mixed up because our ego will lead us somewhere else. And we need to be aware of who I am, of who we are, and where we are going. And I need to know who the people around me are. I do not need to get out of the context, because sometimes in consecrated life, the power will lead us out of that context. But that's not the way forward. So, and I think that all the topics you shared with us, and especially for me, it was really, they were really enriching, and especially for me. Thank you very much. Where are you talking from? Well, I am in Mexico, but I'm from Peru. Well, it looks as if you were in a museum. Uh, because there are a lot of paintings and statues. Well, I'm in a parish church, so I asked the parish church to give me this area because I think I can concentrate better here. Well, it's a very nice place. Thank you very much. Thank you. And now, Jean-Marie.
Microphone.
Je vous remercie. Bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
Moi, ce qui m'a touché dans cette formation, c'est d'abord que ce soit préparé. Ça fait déjà 6 mois
I
aussi
really,
que j'étais dans cette fonction et je n'avais pas
I've been in a leader's role for 6 years.
qui est très riche.
So, and I really like this information because it was an enriching one. When I started this program, it was difficult for me to understand how I could be in the service of others and in the service of the members of my congregation. And it was difficult to be a leader within my mission. And now, today, well, what I discovered is that complexity of the responsibility I need to take on. And also, what the main condition to take on the role of the leader needs to be. So I need to be humble, and I also need to take into account my brother's needs and to be able to interpret the signs of my time. And I have to see this mission not as a personal responsibility, but it's a shared responsibility within my community. It's a responsibility that I share with the members of my congregation. Then I don't know what questions and issues I'm left with, because probably I need more time to think about that. But I think that I learned some tools that I can add to my own tools so that I can be in the service of others. I was very touched by the message about leadership you highlighted, especially the message about the responsibility of a leader. And I was struck by the encyclical of the Pope, All Brothers, and the other text. And I wanted to thank you, everybody, and especially the team for organizing this course, and especially Emily and Piluca for sharing their experiences. And I wanted to thank you, all of you, and I think it was very nice to be together in the grace of God. And that I wanted to thank you because now I'll be able to manage my mission in a better way. And it's a difficult one, not only because of the pandemic, of the coronavirus, but I really think that this course helped me grow, also in the light of my vocation. And the situation of Rwanda and of Africa is a different one from the one in Europe or in other countries, but God is the same, and we look for it in the same way as you do. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brother Jean-Marie. So you are taking the floor from Rwanda, right? Frère Jean-Marie, Brother Jean-Marie, can you hear us?
No.
Yeah. No, I can't. Frère Jean-Marie, can you hear? No? Yes, I'm there. I'm there. So yes, I'm in Rwanda. I'm Rwanda. Yes. What's your congregation?
Notre congrégation, c'est une congrégation autochtone du Rwanda.
It's a autochthon congregation of Rwanda. It's the Josephite Brothers. It's a congregation was set up in 1969 for the apostolic life in Rwanda, and we live with, we take care of charism, of education, and we take care of schools and young people. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much, brother. Thank you for sharing this with us. And now, Felicia Georgis. I'll give you the floor. Felicia. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much. I'm connecting from France, from Paris. And I just wanted to thank you, first of all, especially I wanted to thank you, the Union, International Union of Spirit Generals. I really liked the complementary approach that you had because you were always complementing your two presentations, and I really like that. It's two different ways to present the same reality sometimes, and I think that it can lead to a very good overview, and it can give us some means and tools to face the mission we have to face in our congregation as people who are responsible of the service we provide to our brothers and sisters, and also as members of a given society and as members of cultures we are in. So thank you very much. Thank you for setting up this formation animation program, because we sometimes do not have formation programs, or information is provided by our own brothers and sisters, and sometimes some provinces do not have the chance to follow these formation programs. And as a responsible and as an accompanying person of my group, unfortunately, I didn't have the time to sit down or to stop and to think about the mission that has been entrusted upon us. And I wasn't able to ask questions about how am I living my leadership role and what impact it has on other people and what impact this leadership's role has on myself. And this is an item that I discovered in this path together. And sometimes, well, it's important to consider what we've been entrusted, and sometimes we do not realize what we are, and it's important to manage the movement within ourselves. And sometimes we undergo changes and transformations and transitions, and it's important to be aware of that. And it's the fact of being aware in a humble way, in a genuine way, it's important, but we also need to move from sympathy. We need to be more sympathetic, to be more human as leaders. And so personally, I experienced this path from the very beginning. At the beginning, I was looking forward to experiencing leadership in a different way, and to understanding how to live it in the current context. And I had sometimes the feeling that I was living in a retreat. So it's very important that you told me that we are part of the wider context. It's not a retreat. So thank you very much for the information, the animation, the methodology you used, and for the information you provided us with plenty of images that elicited our sensitiveness and that led us in contact with our most inner self and with our own spirituality, because, of course, we are consecrated people, we are baptized people. And so this is important too. So thank you very much for the balanced and harmonic way that you used to share your methodology and all your information. And as a brother said before, it's as if this is still a work in progress. So as to the issues and questions I'm still left with, probably I need more time to reflect upon everything. So I need more time to reflect on everything in order to answer this question. So what questions and issues I'm left with? And also I would like to think, what am I left with in terms of techniques or feelings that I can apply to my own life? So thank you also for the images you shared with us. They really spoke to me. they spoke to me, and I think that some elements really appeal to our charism, especially my congregation, and especially I really liked his invitation to the unity within the church. And it's important as leader today that we are being more and more called upon to be builders of bridges within our communities. And we need to be bridges between brothers and sisters of our mission, both religious people and laymen and laywomen. And we need to be a bridge between our current situation and an uncertain situation in the future. We need to be the bearer of hope in the light of the mystery and the things that are lying ahead. Thank you very much once again.
Teresa, por favor.
Teresa, please go ahead. Teresa.
Hola,
Hola.
Hi.
estoy hablando desde Argentina,
Hi.
Chaco, provincia del norte. Voy a hacer algo muy
Speaking from Argentina, from a province in the north.
sentimiento, la emoción,
And well, I wanted to thank you for the feelings and the emotions you left me with at the end of this process.
la posibilidad de estas sesiones.
When you informed me about this course and this program, I really liked it. And I really liked the title, The Leadership for a World Ingestation.
Aquí se abre un camino de esperanza.
And I thought, oh, we're going to start a path of hope.
La vida religiosa en este tiempo ya pasó, ya no tiene mucho que decir. Y dije, aquí hay
And I
algo.
thought, yes, there's still hope. There's something new that is going to come out of this.
Directamente todas las sesiones.
I wasn't able to attend all sessions because of different and also technical difficulties, but I did most as I could. And I'm left with the feeling of a deep hope. And I think that leading a religious life like this is always worthwhile. I really liked all the different topics. They're all deep. They've been presented in an excellent way with many experiences. And then I feel committed and I would like to keep on deepening everything. And I would like to share everything I learned with others. And I think I really, you delivered a message of hope in the world that I'm going to share with other people. Elizabeth?
Buenos días.
Yeah. Good morning or good afternoon. And I agree with Hermana Teresa. I'm in Argentina, in the province of Buenos Aires too. And I wanted to thank you for the wonderful course you provided and for the level of depth you reached, also from a spiritual point of view. And it was as if it were a retreat somehow. And when I found out that this course was going to take place, I thought that it was going to be useful also in a concrete way. And I really liked the word leadership in the title because you used a very concrete word to talk about leadership in a religious life in order to move forward on a path of leadership. And I really like this. So I wanted to thank you because you were able to reach a high level of spirituality, but you were also able to talk about a concrete dynamic of human groups. And we're able to talk about situation that we are currently going through, irrespective of the COVID-19. And I really liked all the different topics you dealt with. And especially, I realized that I was somehow asleep. I didn't, it was as if I didn't even know those topics. And you opened my eyes. And I actually,
era cómo ser un líder.
I also expressed these, the fact that Jesus was a leader in service of the system. And in today's world, we do not have to be rebel leaders, or we do not have to think out of the boxes all the time, but we need to be humble too. And I really liked when you said that we do not have to be leaders in the center of the system, but we need to be on the edges to have an overview of the context and to be in the service of the system and the context, but moving and shifting towards a new situation and a new world. And you gave me also hope. I do not have all the answers now, but you gave me hope on how to invite other people to make changes, sometimes even painful changes, so that they can be transformative changes, but not disruptive ones. Always respecting other people without destroying them. And
porque es lo que hoy emerge como más claramente, pero si de cada tema tuviera que hablar, ha sido maravilloso.
I really liked the topics you dealt with. And I also liked the images that were in line with the topics and the graphics, and also the quality of teachers was great. Piluca and Emily, you were really great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Dora, por favor.
And now the next one, Dora. Please go ahead.
Sí, buenas tardes.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody.
Bueno, yo quería también agradecer,
I
ya me
wanted
uno
to thank you too, and I wanted to thank all the sisters who just taken the floor. And well, what my desire was well, I wanted to find how to live in a different way, leadership. And I think that this topic, leadership, was a very evocative one. And in my congregation, we feel the need to move forward as to leadership. And we have this big question, that is, how can we act using leadership? So the sisters of last generation, sometimes we feel tired. And since the word is in gestation, the word is transforming, we realized there was a challenge there. So we needed to respond to the world, and we needed to change ourselves too. So we cannot just stand still because the world is changing. We need to advance. So it's been a great opportunity. Thank you very much. It was very interesting to see all the information you gave us during these 5 meetings. And I really like the human side. And what I discovered by myself in my role as a leader, well, I'm going to take advantage of this. I'm going to enhance this for everybody, not only for some people who are in specific missions, but I think that what I discovered about myself, I can apply to all the relations I have with my sisters, and there's a potential in all of us. And I really liked when you talked about vision and about maintenance and about the pace we are walking to, and about the percentage of time I devote to maintenance or to vision. And sometimes we lose track of vision and we need to maintain it nonetheless. And then Also, the previous sister said this too, that sometimes we need to be on the edges, not in the center. It's important to be clear in the face of reality, and it's important to take on an attitude. I do not need to agree with the system all the time, but it's important to know what contribution I can provide. So I'm left with the desire to learn even more, and my sisters of my congregation followed and attended these formation, and the challenge is now how to turn everything we learned, all the material you gave us, into practice. And I hope that we can still see those videos. They are going to stay there so that we can still study them, and we can take a step forward in the topic of leadership. Thank you very much once again. And I hope that there will be other chances to attend formation. Thank you. And now the last one, Graciela, Ana Paula, and Emerance. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Piluca and Emily. Thank you. Well, I try to answer these three questions in a brief way. First of all, thank you very much for the UISG and the UIS for everything that we learned. And I started, I came to this program because I also had a need. I had some very good experiences of leadership, but I also had some other that somehow disencouraged me. And I also had fear because I am a member of the government of my congregation. And I think that this program was a blessing. It was a bliss. I discovered and I rediscovered things. I discovered and rediscovered different topics, and I drank from the source that you gave us. And also on the chats, it was very useful to share thoughts and reflections. And I was really touched by things I already studied. And especially, I really liked these combinations, so the combination of authority and power, and the comfort zone or the edge zone. And I really liked how you led us to see within ourselves and thinking about ourselves, not only about other sisters of our other lay people around us. And I really liked this comparison you did with All Brothers. I think that Emily made a very good comparison. It was a very clear comparison, the one Emily gave us. And then I really liked the symbol and the wisdom mentioned by Piluca. This symbol expressed by the Jewish shofar. So when we have to take a break to listen, then, and to be in the presence of God and to use fewer words. And the program allowed me to deepen myself and to be more in connection with myself, with my shofar. And then as to what I discovered about myself, I really liked the image of the good Samaritan. And I really like the fact that also this image of God as a poet, as a prophet, of Jesus as a poet. And I really liked this sentence that Everything we've always wanted is on the other side of fear. I think it's a very impressive sentence. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful. As to the last question, well, I hopeful, and I am, but I also have fear, and I really liked the systemic system, and many of us need to define priorities, and I really liked the Franciscan image you showed, and thank you once again, Emily and Piluca. Thank you. Ana Paula, please go ahead. Yes, good afternoon. I am in Portugal, so sorry about my Spanish. It's not perfect. Thank you. It's been very good being part of this formation. Thank you very much. I really liked the way you interpreted leadership. I'm in Portugal in a congregation of older women. Well, I'm one of the youngest. I'm part of the council and of novices, and so sometimes I have to take on this role as a leader. So it was very important to see everything you highlighted. Thank you, Piluca and Emily. I really liked this image of the role of the leader as a prophet. And I really liked also the fact that we has prophets, the fact, I really like this idea that as prophets, we all have to go through bad things sometimes. And I really liked also the image of Jacob. And well, I really liked everything in short. Thank you very much for your program. And Emerance, please go ahead. I would like to thank you, everybody, and especially you for your presentation of the course. Well, I started with this course with the thirst of receiving some teachings, encouraging me to live my mission in a positive way, in happiness and in joy, because personally, when people talk about leadership in their religious life and about the mission of responsible, sometimes I think it's like a cross. It's as if they only had to complain all the time and they're not able to enjoy life. Well, I told myself, it's just a mission like any other mission, and I would like to live this responsibility, being happy to provide it, to provide and to fulfill this mission, because one day I won't be a part of this mission anymore. And so once this mission is over, I don't want to be unhappy. So, because I've seen other people reacted this way, and when they had to leave their mission, they consider it as a drama. So I'm very happy because I was able to listen to your teachings. I learned plenty of things, and I would like to thank you because of that. And then I was really impressed by different topics, and especially about this image of the inner source, about the authority springing from within, and then a combination of the two topics of authority and power. It was really interesting. Thank you very much. I would like to thank you. And if possible, I would like to share this information with my sisters and with the sisters of all communities. And so I would like to do that based also on this experience. I would like to share all these teachings and lessons to so that other sisters can understand that we can be leaders all together, sharing this responsibility together as a shared one. Thank you. And then we need to take the reins of our lives into our own hands. Sometimes we forget this too. And then thank you very much for your support. And I was thinking, is it possible to have, so thank you for your audio support. And I would like to have some writing support, because some African communities cannot access audio files or videos. So it would be useful to have some writing material so that I can send it, and so that we can print it out and we can study on them. Thank you very much for the time you devoted to us. Thank you very much for everything. Did you listen to her message, Piluca? Yes, I did. Yes, I agree with everything. Sure, definitely. Perfect. So we shared all the presentations. Well, some cases we do not have written text, only ideas. So we didn't write it down because it's not a formal like a conference, but we shared the materials. All the materials we had, we share them. And then you also have the literature and the different books that we recommended, and some materials that you can find on the cloud. So you can resort to that material. And so now I'm going to open the chat too. Tomorrow, all the videos we recorded in the 4 languages of the course will be released, as we promised. So you'll be able to share them with your congregations, with your communities. And the same applies also to documents. So you'll be able to share both videos and documents. It's a valuable material. We can also turn a PowerPoint into a PDF, and you'll be able to share it with your congregations and communities. So it's material that we're going to send also together with the newsletters, but you know that there will be a folder including all the public videos starting from tomorrow. Thank you very much. And now to finalize, we just wanted to invite you
Tenemos esta dirección, o es
we
Roma.
wanted to invite you to visit our site. Well, you can see it here, usgroma.org. And there's also this new section, which is about the evaluation and assessment. So we wanted to ask you to fill in this evaluation form, because it can help both the UISG and the USG to understand what your feedback is, if you have any suggestions about the future. And I think it can be very useful for our organizations. And Piluca probably wanted to tell you one last thing before we finalize. Yes. If I had a shofar, then I would be blowing a shofar right now. But apart from that, I have no words left. I just wanted to say that I would like to thank you, because even though it was an online one, it's been an experience of sharing and of community. And this is our passion. So thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Piluca. And on my side, I wanted to thank you. And I was listening to the people who were taking the floor. It's always nice to see a face, to see faces, because when we talk, when we speak, sometimes we do not know if there are real faces behind those black screens, and there are real faces, and it's very nice to feel connected. It's beautiful. Thank you very much. So please fill in our evaluation forms on the website.